perhaps this. It is now understandable why an ontology proceeds to invert the consistency-inconsistency dyad with regards to the two faces of the law, obligation and authorization. The axial, the axial theme of the doctrine of being, as I have pointed out, is the inconsistent multiplicity. But the effects of the axiom system is that of making the latter consistent as inscribed deployment, however implicit, of the pure multiplicity presentation of presentation, right? So the constant, the usual philosophical project is to find a consistent principle
behind the inconsistent,
right, of our existence, of ontology, of phenomenology, what have you. But instead, right, he's taking the radical approach of taking the inconsistent and using that to render the appearance consistent.
But I was talking, the complication I had was a preservation of the sort of infinite multiplicities.
I wouldn't use the language of preservation, but instead a guarding against its sliding into this in its thought. Ontology has to use its axioms and set up its axioms in such a way, the requirement, if you will, for the axioms, the guiding thread that's going to, that one has to use in constructing them, is going to be to make sure that no axiom allows them to be thought only as numbers.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying then. So basically, just to repeat what you're saying to see if I get it, is that any set of axioms that are set up can't undermine the prerequisites for ontology.
Right. That's right. So, so then one other point from this, and I think we've done with meditation 1 as far as I'm concerned, there may be questions, is this point he makes. Or maybe that's all I needed. Yeah, I think that's it. I was thinking of something.
Before we jump to meditation,
so please,
one quick second.
I'm okay to erase this while you do that.
You guys want me to order some pizzas or something for when 2 o'clock comes rolling around? Because we're probably going to go to 4.
Yeah, I'm not in principle opposed.
I'm not opposed to don't do it on my account because I'm going to want to get home. Okay, so let's jump into meditation 2, which for anyone who's done anything with Plato is pure pleasure. This is a fantastic meditation. Really what he's trying to do here, on my interpretation of Badiou's larger project, is to set up why he is a Platonist, though not in the sense people usually speak of Platonists. Badiou is called for a return to Plato. He does it more and more after being an event, but this meditation lays out that project, and I think in a really remarkable way. So first, the point is that Plato explores the decision that Badiou has made, namely, the one is not. Plato explores this in the Parmenides. Of course, it's Parmenides who does the talking, which is interesting for all kinds of reasons. But has everyone read the Parmenides? Anyone not? So that I know.
I haven't.
Okay. A couple haven't. So in the Parmenides, it's staged as Socrates as quite a young guy,
like 1920,
teenager. Yeah.
It's after the sort of like heyday of the middle forms, right? The Republic, Phaedrus.
Yeah, he's running it. Right in the middle of his career, toward the end of the middle of his career, and yeah, Socrates is portrayed here as being still a young kid, and he runs into Parmenides, right? And Parmenides is already the established wise philosopher. And they have this conversation, and Parmenides just runs circles around him, and Socrates is loud and so forth.
Well, Zeno first.
He begins with Zeno, who's famous for his proofs on behalf of Parmenides that the one is.
Well, his claim is that there's not many,
right?
Because if there's many, there's both like and unlike,
right?
And there cannot be both unlike and like, so the many is not.
Yeah. But of course, as Plato says, what you say, so too does Zeno say,
yeah.
Right? Which is to say,
you're saying the not many is also the one.
Right. So there's a negative proof against the many, which is to say there's, as Chris has said, not many, but then there's also the positive proof of the one, which you get from Parmenides.
Right. But actually, it's interesting, right? Because Socrates is like, oh, you're just voting this for Parmenides, right? But also, what he's also saying is, yeah, there's people that posit that there's many, run into just as many problems and contradictions as if saying there is also one.
Right.
And so, I mean, one of Socrates' main criticisms against this sort of thing is like, look, here's the thing. There can be both like and alike, there can be both many and one. But if you can show me that the one is a part of the many as a form, then that's something else, right? Because he says, I am Socrates, I am many, right? I have many hands, I have many parts. But when you count me among the 7 guests there, I'm one. So there's just sort of, I am one and many.
Yeah, and Badiou's reading of the Parmenides is really interesting, I think, in that he wants, by the end of this meditation, to argue that Plato all but did it. Right? And that there's this kind of ironic undertone to the Parmenides, as if Plato is almost, especially when he makes the decision against the form of the one, and when he goes on in the rest of his dialogues to think about participation, Plato's almost formulated Badiou. He just can't make the last step for a couple of reasons. So let's see if we can spell this out by working through this in some.
Just really quick.
Yeah.
Isn't it the case that Parmenides so there's that sort of conversation with Zeno. Parmenides comes in and says no, gives us 6 criticisms of the forms, then explains but this is how you do hypothesis. Yeah. And then he does it with Aristotle, not Aristotle the philosopher, but the younger Aristotle, let's say. And then basically there's one Badiou says, yeah, they did the hypothesis of if the one is not, and then it goes through. Right. But isn't there sort of a flip side of that Plato didn't touch?
Sort of. I think Badiou's got a really interesting reading of this part. So let's get that on the table. Okay. So yeah, Parmenides and this young guy Aristotle, who's not the Aristotle we all either adore or hate. I'll let you decide. Depends on whether you're reading his ethics or whether you're reading his metaphysics. But Parmenides goes through this. The proofs regarding the one is, the one isn't, and so forth. And Badiou wants to look just at the 8th and 9th hypotheses that deal with the one is not, right? I mean, this same formula that Badiou's playing with here. And as Badiou says, it's unbalanced, the exposition here, because Plato's Parmenides does not go quite far enough in thinking about the one specifically. So let's make this clear. I should go out my notes for this meditation instead of looking at my notes for the meditation. So what Plato has Parmenides argue is that if we're going to say the one is not, then the one still has at least a minimal link to being, in that it participates in the being of to be non-being. In order to say that the one is not, it at least participates in this minimal being that is to be non-being. So this is also a kind of being, but it's a very minimal one. And Badiou goes on to say that what we should call that is pure nomination. The proper name. So we've got the one participates in this, but what he's trying to point out and saying it's unbalanced is that he points this out, but he really only is dealing with being here. He never really deals with the one. He leaves the one unthought. Plato's Parmenides does. Parmenides in Plato's dialogue leaves the one unthought. He thinks through this, and this question of pure nomination, Badiou says, is absolutely right. There's something quite right about this, that being is reducible if the one is not. Being is reducible to pure nomination. That's right. We'll see if we can clarify why further along here. But he never really thinks through the question of the one at this stage. He goes on then to talk about the many, if the one is not. So still we're without the one.
Plato refers to these as the others.
Yeah. No.
Or is that the Platos? This is the Paul or the Platos?
Well, yeah, he's talking. Yeah, the others. You're right. It's not the many. The others.
I mean, I remember he mentions it in the dialogue.
Yeah, it is the term the others. I have that wrong. So he wants to talk about the others than the one, right? Which isn't here. So now we're going to look at the question of the others where there is no one. And here, the question that Parmenides in Plato's dialogue is trying to raise is, what is it that guarantees or gives the others their otherness? Here again, we're edging close to Levinas, right? What is it that's going to allow these others to be other, to be literally heteronym, right? To be other than something else. And if the one is not, this is the point of Parmenides' proof, if the one is not, the one can't guarantee their otherness. That's Levinas's solution. The one namely the other with a big capital O is what guarantees the otherness of the others. But since the one is not here, Plato goes beyond Levinas, nice 2,500 years in advance, and it shows that the others have to be other on their own merits, immanently to themselves. And what's going to allow that to be? I'm trying to find myself in my notes here. So the only way that can happen is if this is a kind of pure proliferation of multiplicity. And this is precisely what Parmenides and Plato's dialogue outlines.